So of course I stupidly didn't record the second half of this class. Even during break, I told myself, like, remember to hit record again, and I didn't. So, doing a little bit of a video session for you. And that's fine, because I actually am able to do a 40-minute class in like 25, 30 minutes, because I've already done a couple demos here. So, we're going to look at Deforum. As I was trying to think about, like, how we would talk about this idea, this concept, and how we would think about this compared to last week, which was really more of that cinematograph sort of static hold, moving hold kind of thing, where things are in static positions and we're kind of making them flicker around things. I was thinking about, like, what's another animation technique that this kind of resembles. So we're going to look at stuff like scroll animation. So again, back in the day, pre 2D animation on computers, when people just had physical things they were photographing on an animation stand or something, animators would paint on literally a long scroll. And you can imagine like a walk cycle where you're kind of like seeing someone walk by, and the scroll would slowly move behind them, indicating they were walking a certain direction. So, the walk cycle would happen sort of in a static position, but then the background would move around them, and that would sort of indicate they're walking. So we're going to kind of play with that as the analogy here when we look at this stuff. So here's a good example of this. Here you see Madeline from UPA in 1952. You'll see that background kind of moves around behind them. So we're going to kind of play with that concept. Not exactly that technique, but that concept. And of course, as people like to mention with my classes, I always teach these in more of an experimental fashion. And it wouldn't be one of my classes if I didn't get to mention Jordan Belson. Early beat filmmakers like Harry Smith or Jordan Belson kind of love this technique because it was also, again, kind of cheap way to do animation. So they would often paint on these large scrolls, and they would kind of move the camera around in that position, either making stuff scroll animated wise or almost using it as like a stop motion sequence. This is a film from an early San Francisco filmmaker, experimental filmmaker by the name of Patricia Marks. I'm fairly certain this was done on a scroll. Don't quote me on that completely, but this was filmed and photographed by Jordan Belson. So I kind of assume you can kind of see certain sections that are clearly sort of something is moving left to right or top to bottom on the screen. Give me 1 second. This cat is being insane right now. Come on. So there you go. You got to watch a little bit of Patricia Marks' film while I was hanging out with this cat. So again, sort of the concept here is paint on a big item and then move it. And there's a way for us to kind of think about how we would do this using AI techniques as well. And obviously, we don't necessarily have like a big scroll, although we actually could do that maybe in a future class. In this case, we're going to look at is something that's more of an iterative idea, an iterative concept. So the idea is, let's start by generating an image. Just like we would in Midjourney, we're going to generate an image using diffusion. So we're going to generate that image, and then what we're going to do is we're going to move that image just slightly. So we might move it to the left, to the right, top, bottom, other translations, other transformations. Then what we want to do is we want to take this translated image and do image to image over that. And if you remember last week, we talked about image to image as sort of this like half denoising process. So add a little bit of noise to your image and then denoise from that. And what you actually end up getting is something that is kind of like the image before, but it adds a little bit more detail or like changes to the image slightly. So we're going to do that over and over and over again, and what we end up getting is an animation that moves sort of like a scroll animation. It moves from left to right. Now there is one problem here, which is that when you do this translation, you kind of end up having this little gap here. And what do you do with this gap? Like, how do you have this translate as a part of the image? There's a couple different techniques you could do. One is you could just add pure noise into this space. The other is inpainting. Inpainting is probably a little bit safer, a little bit smarter, because what you do is you actually just take some of the region that's in this image and kind of fill it in here, and then it's easier to sort of do the image-to-image diffusion process over that because it's kind of already the full image. But now we've got a lot of steps, right? So we have to like make an image, translate an image by moving it left to right, top, bottom, do the inpainting, and then do image to image over top of that. And if I didn't spend the first hour of this class talking about sequencing, we would have done that manually, but it also would have been clearly very annoying. So the nice thing is that there is a company and a tool that has basically like packaged this up into a full concept, and that's called Deforum. So Deforum, there's actually two versions. There's one that's called Deforum Studio, which is what we'll look at today. There's another one that's called Deforum, which is sort of a plugin for a popular tool called Automatic 1111. Automatic 1111 was kind of the precursor to Comfy UI in that a lot of people used it to, with their own GPUs and it has a lot of parameters and a lot of things you can fine tune. The problem is for this class, I assume none of us already have a GPU, or none of you already have a GPU, and that you don't have access to Auto 1111, or you haven't played with it before. And Auto 1111 is quite a complex tool, and Deforum, the plugin for it, is also quite complex. So we're going to look at kind of the dumbed down, like simplified version of it. There's slightly different parameters, and there's a little bit less of things you can sort of customize, but it's still really fun to play with, and you can still make pretty good animations with it, regardless of all the bells and whistles. So Deforum does come with a price. There's a couple different payment options. You can pay $8 to get 20 videos, about 20 videos, and each video is about 15 seconds long. So you can pay $8, just get 20 videos flat. They do have subscriptions where you can pay per month. There's a $15 range and a $30 range, and you get 50 videos or 120 videos, depending on which one you pay for. The other thing I'll mention is that these are not necessarily accurate for video, because if you do a starting image, or if you do audio syncing, which is also a tool they have, it costs a little bit more. So it's a wiggle room. It's a little bit like 15 to 20 videos versus actual 20 videos, or 40 to 50. 100 to 120, that sort of thing. So just be aware of that, but I would recommend like trying it out. So even if you only pay $8 and just play a little bit, I think you'll find there's some really interesting tools here, and there's a lot that Deforum can do. So the website's linked to from here. So the nice thing about Deforum is it comes with a lot of these preset animation styles. So here's a good example of just like a moving left to right kind of one. They've got a bunch of other ones here. So actually, before we jump into Deforum Studio, let's take a look at some of those presets. They call them motion presets, and the nice thing about the motion presets are that they have probably like 100 of them now, and you can see all of them here on this page. I'll link to it in our syllabus. There are a number of different presets. Some of them are traditional like 2D animation presets. Some of them are crazy 3D zooms, or doing like some sort of rotation and other things. So I definitely recommend checking out this page just to sort of see the options. I've kind of pulled out like some of my favorites, or some of the more popular ones here in this page. So there's a classic one just called Move Right. That's basically what we've already been talking about, right? You make an image, move it to the right a little bit, make an image, move it to the right a little bit, make an image. That's essentially what you're seeing here. There's another one here called Classic Stop Motion. And this one, you'll kind of see that it almost does like that one animation I did, where it varies like strongly, holds for a couple frames where it does like a subtle animation, then like a big jump, and it does kind of have that like sort of more classic slower frame rate stop motion. There are other ones that are like essentially rotations. So this one sort of rotates the image, and then does the image-to-image process. Now, a funny thing about rotation is you would expect that it would eventually, like in this position exactly, you would expect that it would actually be the cat upside down. One of the problems, or like one of the tricky things, we'll talk about this more a little bit more maybe next week, is this tool uses Stable Diffusion 1.5, which is probably about 2.5, 3 years old now. And one of the funny things, particularly about Stable Diffusion 1.5, but even all image diffusion models, is it's actually hard to generate an image upside down. The reason for that is we don't really train those models on images upside down. We generally train those models on all the right side up images, and very, very few of them are anything that's upside down. So these models actually are pretty poor at generating images that are upside down. So with this Revolve one of the funny things you're going to see is, let's go back a second. You're going to notice that the images start right side up, and they kind of do like turn to the side, but then when it should be flipped up upside down entirely, you just get kind of a weird image. You get either something laying down on its side, or you get these like weird little sushi cat head things. So revolve, or like spin, rotation, doesn't work as well as you would think it would. And that's kind of a funny little trick of these models. This is another classic one. When Deforum first came out maybe 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, everyone did this sort of animation. And when I was talking about it in class, I feel like people were like, oh, I shouldn't do it, or like, I feel bad if I do it. But let's be honest, it's pretty cool. It's like a very fun sort of like zooming into the world kind of thing. It's pretty psychedelic and trippy. So, feel free to try it. But it is one of those that like, when people see that, they're like, oh, you made that in Deforum, because it's kind of the one that everyone knows about. And they've even added these kind of crazy ones that are not necessarily like translations or transformations, but just like kaleidoscope kind of things, which are really actually pretty cool. But you will see it kind of does this crazy, like, sort of trippy thing. But what's interesting is the face in the middle, like, kind of stays pretty consistent. So again, they've got a lot of options, and that one page I linked to, like, will show you, like, all of the 100 options you have. Now, as I mentioned, like, this was a very, very popular tool about 2-3 years ago when it first came out, and it used a different model. There are a couple other commonly, like, similar tools. One that I've taught previously, and maybe I'll find a link to it for the tutorial for this, is a tool called either Aphantasia or Illustrip. And these even had, like, 3D. They did, like, faux 3D kind of things. So you can kind of see it's, like, stretching, or it does, like, a depth map kind of thing. This is obviously from 2021, so it's almost 4 years ago now. Jesus. Time flies. And you'll see it has a very different look, in part because the diffusion models weren't as good then. But also, like, I kind of like it. It's a little bit more abstract. It looks a little different. So again, I always love in these classes to also be like, go find an old tool if you can still run it. Like, try to run it, because there's some really cool options that you can't get today. Like, you couldn't get this style today. So we're going to take a look at Deforum now, but just know, like, there's a ton of options. They have both motion presets as well as what they call style presets. So we'll look at that now. So once you've signed up for an account, you can sign up with an account either with a Discord account or a Google account. They also have a Discord bot, so if you are, like, more of a Discord maxi, unlike me, feel free to use Discord. So if you're already using the Discord Midjourney app, you might want to use the Deforum tools as well. Once you want to create in here, you can go in here and hit plus the create button. So there's not that many options, but there's enough here to, like, kind of have some fun with it. So let's start by just making a really classic, just generate from a text prompt. So I was kind of into the idea that all these were cat sushi, so I'm just going to type in cat sushi. And maybe we say, I don't know, fish tails. Let's add fish tails to this as well. Okay, fish tails. There we go. So there are style options. So you'll kind of notice that a lot of the Deforum ones have, like, different looks and feels, and that's because of these style options. You can choose random, in which case nothing is applied, or in case it pulls randomly. The downside of choosing random is I don't think it ever tells you what you actually used. So that would be a bit of a tricky thing to find out if you really like a style. You can turn it off if you wanted to apply styles directly here. So you'll notice I didn't apply any styles here. Like, I didn't say, like, in the style of a manga comic book or, like, that sort of thing. In part because I knew I was going to apply that via the styles here. So if you want to turn it off, you could apply styles by just adding stuff in here. But let's grab one of these styles. So there's a ton in here. Someone asked in class if there was a link to all the different styles. That I have not found in their documentation. So you would have to go in and kind of play with each of these to sort of decide what you wanted. I'm just going to pick one. Let's do Dreamscape. I'm going to skip over the image prompt stuff. We'll look at one more example like that in a minute. You do have 3 different aspect ratio options. You cannot change from that. This is, again, one of those things where I think the Deforum plugin for Auto 1111 does let you do more of this kind of stuff. But in this case, you only have 3 options. So square, vertical 9:16, and landscape 16:9. I'm going to go with a classic 16:9 landscape. We'll skip over the audio sync. We're going to just do a classic motion preset for now, but we will look at another example where we'll use audio sync, which is if you give the file like a 15-second piece of audio, it'll kind of pull out the beats of it and then basically try to move on the beat. It's hit or miss as it works, but it is worth looking at. So let's take a look at just using the classic one for now. So again, we looked at all those motion presets. There are a ton of different options here. I think there's even some here that are not yet listed in the list of in the documentation page. So there's a ton here. I'm gonna go through this and find a different one that I haven't used before. There are a couple different fly-throughs, so let's use fly-through spin. It feels like that's kind of like a fun one, so we'll try that. Next, there are different animation lengths. You can slow down your video, or you can generate a 15 or 30-second video. So then you can do 15 and then slow it down, and you'll see like it changes the duration. So you can either do 30 or 60. I'm going to leave it at 15. Next is smoothing. So smoothing, we haven't really looked at anything with smoothing yet. There's a tool called Animate Diff, which maybe we'll look at next week or the week after, depending on sort of like how those weeks go. This allows you to make more of a fluid motion animation, but this is a stop motion class, so we're going to turn that off completely. But you can see there are different settings. So there's low, medium, high, and butter, which just sounds kind of gross, to be honest. But I'm going to turn it off because this is supposed to be a classic stop motion class, and this will give you that classic stop motion. Not exactly classic, but it kind of gives you like there's no blending. It's just sort of like each frame is generated as is. So at this point, I can see that this only is going to cost me 1 credit. So again, if you paid the $8 and you only got 20 videos, this is one of those 20 videos. You'll see that if we turn on other things like audio sync, it's not going to show it. But if we interchange, we'll find this when we use image prompts or when we turn on audio sync, this will cost more. But in this case, this is a classic one. It's only going to cost 1 credit. So go ahead and hit create. Now, one thing you should know is this is not like a very fast process. Midjourney generates images pretty quickly, maybe in a couple seconds. In this case, we're going to generate a lot of frames, and each one of those frames is going to take a certain period of time to make. So this might take 10 minutes to generate an animation. I feel like it takes more like 5 minutes, but depending on the queue they have, like so in class, when all 12 of us were generating images all at once, like this definitely took some time. So just be aware this is going to take a little bit of time. I figure what we'll do in the meantime while this runs in the background is let's take a look at some of the animations I created recently. So earlier this week when I was kind of demoing and testing stuff, I took one of the images that I made in the Midjourney session and uploaded that here to the image uploader, and then used that as the starting point. So if we click on this one, you'll see I guess this first image here kind of looks like the image that we had that I made in Midjourney. Kind of. Not exactly. Like, these things are not... They're going to override and do kind of their own things, but they will look something like the image you upload. And this is using the revolve, which, again, remember, means that it won't really do actually upside downs. It kind of, like, twists their body a little bit. And this used this psychedelic prompt style. So kind of quickly like devolves from that photorealistic version into something more like this. Now, again, I mentioned that they're using a model called Stable Diffusion 1.5. Stable Diffusion 1.5 is not great for photorealistic stuff, or at least not 2025's version of photorealism. Like when it first came out, people were like, oh, this is amazing. You make really looking photorealistic images. And now we're like, we've blown it away with like Flux and other models. We'll talk about base models and that sort of thing next week. But you'll see that, like, it does sort of move to this more psychedelic, sort of trippy, flat image kind of style very quickly. You'll also notice what I think is kind of nice about this is there is a download for a video and a download for your frames. Now, the video comes down as a compressed H.264 MP4, which obviously we talked about is compressed. And in many cases, we'll have like JPEG compression artifacts or other things in it. Not really JPEG, just video compression artifacts in it. So if you wanted the raw video file, the raw frames, to make like a ProRes or maybe even to upload into like After Effects or Premiere to make as a part of a video, you could download those separately. It's kind of nice that they do that. You can also look at every individual frame that gets generated here. So it does generate 180 frames. Yeah, 178, 180 frames for a 15-second video. So that's what, about, I think it's like a 12 frames per second rate. So you'll see it has like a little bit of flicker, but it's pretty smooth, I would say, overall. Let's check out one more video that I've made here. Oh, it finished my video, so we'll come back and look at that in a minute. I made this one in class yesterday. This is the classic move to the move right animation. Uses the comic book style, and you'll see I still love this like last part of the section. So it generates some sushi, but then it generates like the tails of the fish. I love it. I love that part. The rest of it I'm kind of okay with. It does have that comic book style, like lots of like sort of flat vector sort of graphics and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that's really fun to play with. The thing I'll say is like this is kind of like just spinning a roulette wheel or rolling the dice. You might not get a video you love. You might get a video you do like. There's not much control in these beyond just like maybe that first image. After that, it kind of does its own thing. So you will kind of find that like with varying results, and you might get a little frustrated at some point because there isn't a whole lot of controls here. What you're really controlling is the motion and maybe the style. And if you set those up, and you could run this exact same setting like multiple times and get different videos every time. Like, let's actually do that. I'll hit create just to see what kind of different video we get. So just be aware of that. It is a little bit of a roll the dice to see what you get kind of thing. But we only had an hour for this session or this part of the class, so I kind of want to just have some fun and make some fun videos. Let's take a look at what we started generating here. So I'll go back to this one. And let me see if I hit refresh here. Yeah, so the other thing I like about this is that it does show you, it doesn't necessarily show you all of the video, but you can start to preview your video as you're watching it. Now, if you hit cancel, it will stop your creation of your video. I don't think it really gives you back any of your credits because you've already generated about half the video or whatever. But if you were like, this is absolutely not going the right way and you just wanted to stop your queue to like queue up more videos, you could just hit cancel for that. So let's take a look at what we get. Oh yeah. Some cat heads turning into fish tails. Kind of fun. Like that we get some mountains, we get some lots of fish scales, I think. That's cool. Overall, I'm kind of happy with it. Again, with all these, you're kind of like, you can create some really good stuff, but if you were to like, I don't know, work with a client or something and show this as an art directed piece, they'd be like, I don't like this particular frame. And you're like, sorry, I can't fix anything here. This is just what you get. So, but in general, I think these presets are fun. It's great to just get started and play with stuff. So let's now take a look at how to do this with an image to image. So actually, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just an image that I always use. It's going to take me a minute to scroll to find it. But I think it might be fun to try it. Let's see if it's this one. Yeah, it's this one. So I do a lot with these Tai Chi actors, and this was actually already using Stable Diffusion 1.5, so I'm kind of interested to see what happens when I use this image. So let's use this one. And of course, it's got to be smaller size. So let me find this image on my desktop. Let's see. Well, let's find a different image to use then. Or when in doubt, we can just open something and screenshot it. So let's do that. Let's open one of these. I'm just going to take a screenshot of this. And let's go ahead and upload it. Although it might give me the same error. Let's just see. 4 megabytes. Okay, we should be good. Cool. So I want to do something that uses this as an image. This is a Tai Chi sort of dancer. So let's do Tai Chi dancer. Let's say photo studio, high contrast. And let's pick, because this image itself is already pretty photorealistic, let's see if there's a photorealism one. 3D, digital mark, photographic. Let's see if photographic. Let's see if there's anything better. Hyperrealism, collage, paper style, analog film. Let's just try an analog film one. I don't know what this is going to do. It might add a bunch of film grain, but let's see what happens. And then let's try one that is a little bit more basic. Let's do a... Let's say move left instead. And you know what I'll do this time? I'll just show what it looks like with smoothing on. So I'm just going to turn smoothing to medium. Now the thing you'll notice is that actually turning on smoothing changes the price of this video quite dramatically. So even just turning any smoothing on is going to turn this into like double the price. I'm fine with that. I'm paying a lot, and these guys are friends of mine. So I'm going to turn this on and leave it on. But I'll just show you what it looks like with this on. So at this point, let's go ahead and hit create. Let's see if we got our other... Yeah, let's see if we got another cat sushi video. Yeah, we did. So you'll see this one is quite different from the other one. And that's because of random seeds. The whole goal of this tool is to generate lots of different video. But this one looks quite different, and I have to be honest, I don't like it as much. But this is kind of the fun of this tool, or like maybe kind of the challenge of all AI tools, which is that most of them don't have that much control for repeatability. Or the way to do repeatability is to use a different tool than this. But what you do get is like you're able to generate lots of different videos pretty effectively. So you could hit, you could generate all 20 videos in one session and then pick your favorite to upload or to share or that sort of thing. So there's some power in the randomness of these tools, but I think for a lot of us, like if you're like, oh, I like parts of this, but I don't like everything in it, a tool like this is not necessarily set up for iteration where like you can improve certain sections. It's more just sort of like a random generator. So what we'll do is I'm going to pause the video for now. We'll come back and look to see if that other video has been generated. And then I'm also going to find a little beat clip for us to do the audio sync. So we'll come back in just a minute. One thing I didn't mention that I should have before is I believe unless you're paying for the very highest price point on Deforum, all of your animations are public by default. And I think you can't even turn them off unless you're paying for the highest price. So that's sort of a double-edged sword. Just be aware that anything you make on the site is public and other people can see it. And quite honestly, other people can download your videos as well, which, again, maybe not the best, but just know that it's possible for that. Now, I think that's actually kind of cool because what you do is if you go to the Explore tab here, you can see what anyone else has made. And let's say, like, oh, I really like this animation. What technique did they use to get this to be made like this? Let's see if I can find one I actually like in here. Let's go to page 3. And let's just scroll down for a little bit, and let's say, I like this one. Kind of nice, there's face, there's pretty smooth, simple motion here. So let's go ahead and click on it, and I can see exactly how they made it. So you'll see that they use medium smoothing, classic, they used evolve slow, which is probably getting that slow generation, and they upload an image that looks like this. Now that's kind of nice, but it looks like if I were to do this myself, it would cost me 3 credits. So again, I kind of like that I can see this, I can see what their prompt is, I can see what settings they use, and I can maybe tweak my own. Now, I could also just go ahead and hit create again, and I would generate basically the exact same video, and maybe there's some weird IP or creative rights of that, but just know that, like, I think it's kind of powerful, but also your video can be seen. Just FYI. So let's go back to my library. It looks like my video finished, so I can go ahead and click on this one. And you'll see like what I uploaded versus what it generated is quite different. And that just kind of happens. That's sort of the part of the deal here. But if I run this, interesting. It doesn't get this smoothing. I wonder if this smoothing happens when everything is finished. So we're actually not done yet. That's fine. We'll go ahead and we'll generate a new one and sort of see what happens there. But you'll kind of see, I don't know, it's kind of nice. I don't hate it. Get some really long arms. This SD 1.5 was one of those models where everyone was like, oh, look at how it's got like 8 fingers on the hand. So like it's definitely not perfect, but I kind of like this one. It's kind of interesting that they're like kind of, I don't know, they're like dancing together, I guess, in some ways. All right, well, we'll wait until this one is finished to see if it does the motion smoothing at the very end. I assume it does because there's clearly no motion smoothing in this, but that's okay. We'll just see what happens. So let's take a look at how to use audio sync. So go ahead and hit create here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the motion style to audio sync. And then there are presets here. We'll look at presets, but first I'm going to upload my song. The song is over here. I'm going to upload it by dragging it in. And you'll see there's this nice little thing here that like basically lets you pick what section of the song you want. I'm going to play just from the very beginning. I doubt you can hear that because, well, to be honest, I don't want any sound to be heard because it's going to end up getting my video demonetized. But what I'll do is I'll upload the video for us in class so you can hear what it sounds like. But yeah, I always have problems with this where I'll like upload a whole tutorial and then it gets demonetized because I use someone else's song. So I'm fine with this section. One thing I do recommend is you find a section that has a pretty strong beat. I've previously uploaded some stuff where it just had like a piano, and if it's just piano and there's no strong beat, it might not catch the actual like beat that it's supposed to find, and then you get a video that doesn't feel like it's necessarily audio synced. We'll see what this one does, but in general, that's kind of what I find. So it looks like this one is saying it's 112 offset. You can, it looks like see below to edit. Where do I edit this? Oh, you can actually change the BPMs. This is so funny. During class yesterday, I just looked at it from here. I didn't even think you could scroll down to see a different other tempos or other ways to change the BPM. So that's cool. That's nice. I feel stupid now. You can change the BPMs if you're finding it doesn't work for you. So maybe you generate a video first, or maybe you find a way to like do a little click tapping to make sure that it is 112. I think that actually sounds about right for the song that I have. So let's just run it and see what happens. So next we need to fill in a bunch of stuff. So we want to set our audio sync preset. So there are, again, different presets for different audio sync capabilities. You'll see kind of in these little thumbnails kind of what they do. So basically, like, it'll kind of like move faster when there's a beat. It'll zoom in when there's a beat, like those sort of things. So let's just see if I can find one here. I don't know if I really want audio active circles. Let's do this fly through one. Again, I'll just go old school and we'll go fly through everything. What did it say below it? Smooth fly through based on audio amplitude. So that probably means like as the audio gets louder, it moves faster or slower. I want to do this. I want to do one that's on tempo. So let's do. Okay, let's do the beat fly through. This is the one I did before. It kind of moves. It kind of like does a little jump when it hits the beat. So let's try that. And I'm gonna go ahead and type in some other prompts here again. Well, actually, let's just do this. Let's do our person again. We'll grab our video. We'll grab our image here. We'll say Tai Chi artist. Fluid motion, 16mm film grain, and let's pick one of these prompt styles. So let's pick a different one. Let's do something kind of crazy. Let's do like a Renaissance one. I don't know what this is gonna look like, but we'll see. I'll probably turn our person into like a oil painting or something. Okay, so you'll see like when I add audio sync, it adds a little bit of credit time in here. So it costs a little bit more than a single credit. That's just to process the audio and stuff. I'm going to keep smoothing off because I imagine, yeah, turning smoothing on kind of turns up my money a little bit. Probably also takes longer to process, so that's the thing. If speed is an issue for you, just be aware of that. I'm going to set the aspect ratio to 16:9 again. And the other thing I'm going to do is you can do different kind of image influences. So I set it to medium by default. Let's just crank up the image influence. So I want the image influence to be quite high, which means it will pull more from the image than it will from this text prompt. It's still going to have some influence. It'll probably be more like 80-20 versus 50-50. So go ahead and create here. That'll kick off our animation. And let's scroll down and let's just see if we finish this video. Looks like it's still processing. That's okay. Oh, no, it's finished. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and see what happened here when we did this with the smooth motion. Yeah, so if you remember before, it was a little staccato, and here you get like these smooth, basically kind of morphs the image a little bit, which isn't, it's kind of cool in this regard. I love that you get different arms and stuff. Interesting. Okay, well, so here's a good example of what motion smoothing does. Again, do you like the classic look of the stop motion, which is what we thought this class is going to be? Do you like this? We'll, again, probably look at some stuff that does more smoothing like this next week or the week after, because these tools are pretty readily available. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video. We'll come back and we'll look at the version with the audio sync on, and then we'll just kind of wrap up for the day, and I'll talk a little about homework for the week and other things we need for next week. Okay, so my video is finished. Let's go ahead and play it. Again, you won't be able to hear the sound. I'll upload this separately for people just because I don't want to be demonetized or anything. But I can tell you this is much more accurate than previous examples. Like, there's a strong clap in this, and when this song has a clap, like, the video, like, kind of changes scenes, which is nice. So this works great. Again, like, this gives you a little bit of different controls. Like, one thing I always like to do with my films is, like, I'll upload a song, play the animation, use that to control the animation, but then just remove the song, and you get these, like, nice sort of, like, bouncy sort of images and bouncy sort of videos. So, like, you know, you don't always have to use the sound. Like, you can use that as a way to control the animation without actually, you know, using the soundtrack that you use. So just keep that in mind. There are things you can do. There are different ways, different techniques to kind of play with this. But overall, Deforum, fun tool. I definitely recommend playing with it. It's always cool to just like generate fun videos to share on social media, that sort of thing. And it's like a pretty decent tool, and it generates some nice long videos. And if you played, we talked a little bit about this in class before we started recording, but like people are asking about Sora and other like generative video tools, and I actually find like this is more controllable than those video tools are today. For a lot of reasons, maybe we'll get into them someday, but like I actually think there's more you can do with sort of stuff like this than there is in those generative video tools that are really just crapshoots, total crapshoots. Okay, so to wrap up this week, a little bit of homework for everybody. So this week, I just want people to explore sequencing. So we talked a lot about the sequencing techniques, that sort of thing. Try different ways of sequencing your images. Maybe generate more stuff in Midjourney to leverage these tools. And then try generating some images in Deforum. Please share them in a Slack channel. I love seeing what people make, and I think this week we'll see some really fun and trippy stuff because of how easy it is to make fun things with Deforum. And then start to think about what you like and don't like about those techniques, because I think over the next couple weeks we'll also explore ways to do similar things, and maybe there's even things we can pull in that I haven't thought about yet, because now that I play with Deforum more, I'm like, oh, I want to try that in Comfy, or I want to try that. Maybe we'll see. I don't even really do an Eden. We could. I don't want to write that code. We'll see. Anyways, there's ways to sort of leverage these techniques and other tools, so we can think about that as well. Last thing, I mentioned this at the beginning of class, but please bring 10-second videos, like a couple of them, like maybe 3 to 5 10-second videos for next week. We're going to look at next week is basically decomposing those and using those as guidance for image generation. So we'll look at that next week. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being with me as I had to re-record this second half of class, but I learned a little bit and I've improved on my Deforum skills. So hopefully you found something out of this. Again, please, questions in Slack, share your work in Slack, that sort of thing. And yeah, I'll see you next week.